Let me start by asking, have you ever had a day when you did all the right things? You got the work done, showed up for family, smiled when you were supposed to, but yet when you got to the end of the day and you laid your head down and you had that thought of, why do I still feel so empty, even though I did everything right? And you're not necessarily sad, you're not necessarily angry, but it's just this low, quiet ache that you can't really explain. That is what we're talking about tonight. If you have ever said, I don't even know what I want anymore, or I just need to push through this season, or even I should be more grateful than I am right now. Ladies, that's the disconnect. That is your signal. And I need you to know, and I want to meet you right where you're at. It is not because you're lazy. It's not because you're unmotivated. It's not because you're ungrateful. It's because you're living a life that is out of alignment with your worth. Again, that's where it all starts. And maybe, just maybe, you've never actually learned what that worth is to begin with. For as long as I can remember, actually, I'm going to pause right there. If this is speaking to you, say me, because I want to know, I hope I'm speaking to you tonight, but who here can say, like, I feel that, I felt that? Drop a yes or a me, or like I'm in the right place, something like that. So I know I'm talking to you. Ladies, for as long as I can remember, I've had this pull on my heart to encourage others. And it didn't necessarily start with encouraging other women. I just knew I was placed here, that my calling is to help. And I didn't really always know how that was supposed to look, but that desire was always there. If you're enjoying what you're seeing, I encourage you to hit the like, notification, and subscription button to continue receiving my content. When I first started I did several side hustles, my first one being Mary Kay, and that was ages ago. But I remember going with my director to seminar in Dallas, and I saw these incredible women up on stage, and they were so inspiring and so well put together. And I told my director, like, I distinctly remember telling my director, I want to be there. I want to be that woman on stage. And it's not because I wanted to get the sales and sell the skincare and the makeup, but I wanted to be on that stage because I knew I wanted to be the one breathing fire and life into women. And I wanted to know how to get there. I want to inspire people. But the thing was, I didn't believe I could. So I kept trying to find my way through side hustles. I don't even know how many side hustles I've tried now, but I tried so many different opportunities, thinking maybe I would stumble into what my calling was. But every time my heart would circle back to the same exact thing. How do I help women believe in themselves when I don't even believe in me? And that's powerful. It took years for me to finally stop outsourcing what I was called to do. And it wasn't until recently that I got real with myself and I was like, I keep trying these side hustles. I keep trying all these things, thinking that I'm going to find what I'm called to do, knowing deep down that one more side hustle, one more opportunity was not it. And I got to the point that I was so tired of investing in myself. No, I take that back. I got tired of realizing that I was investing in everything else but myself, but what that true calling was. I knew what I was meant to do. And I finally decided that it was time to trust that calling and really step into it. And just because I found it, like, that's the crazy part too. Like, we think, okay, we had this big aha moment, right? We finally figured it out. We're finally stepping into alignment with it. Now it's going to be easy. No, that's not it. Like, it definitely didn't get easier after that. In fact, it probably got a little bit tougher because that decision brought up every single inner critic that I have ever had. The imposter syndrome, the self-doubt, that deep, deep questioning of whether I truly am good enough to do this work. But that is also, like, the beauty in all of that is also that that's when it all kind of clicked for me too. Like, this wasn't a strategy issue. This wasn't a find one more side hustle issue. It definitely came down to a confidence issue. And I said that wrong. It wasn't even a confidence issue because we can have all the confidence in the world, but if we don't have that solid foundation of worth, that confidence doesn't matter. If we don't believe in our own value, if we don't believe in ourselves, if we don't believe in our worth, that confidence doesn't matter. So it wasn't even a confidence issue. It was truly a worth issue. So once I started doing that inner work, and I even, a few years ago, and I know I've talked about this a few times, a few years ago, I became a certified trauma recovery coach. And with that, even though that's not the route I took, I didn't stay that path. It gave me a lot of the tools I needed to start working on myself and to walk through all those voices and stuff that I've been carrying. And because of that, I began growing into who I am now. I had to stop waiting to feel ready. I had to stop pretending that I was broken, because we're not broken. And I also had to stop confusing being more with doing more. Just because we're doing more doesn't mean anything, right? We don't have to do more to prove our value or to prove our worth. In fact, research from the Self-Esteem Institute shows that when a woman lacks self-worth, she oftentimes overfunctions in every area of her life to make up for what she believes she lacks inside. Let that sink in for a moment. Drop a wow for me if that's just like mind blowing. We overfunction in everything else when we feel like we're missing something inside. When we feel like our worth is lacking, when we feel like we're not providing enough value. That might show up as overgiving, that might show up as over apologizing. You're going to second guess every win you have and instead replay every single mistake. How many of you in here can't take a win for a win? Instead, you take a step back and be like, okay, but I could have done this better. I should have done this differently. Maybe you keep yourself busy to avoid those quiet moments that remind you of how disconnected you feel. And it's exhausting. It is exhausting to live that way, because I have lived that way. And it's such a beautiful thing when you realize it and you're going to stop it where it's at. Like, I can't even begin to explain the growth that I've had, even within the last couple of months, just from doing this work on myself. I can see, like, I talk a lot about my business and how it's expanding in my coaching and how it's allowing me to step out in confidence in building my business, but it's so much more than that. I now see myself putting boundaries in place with my family. I see my relationship with my own husband getting better because of it. I see my relationship with my own kids getting better because of it. Because I know how to use the tools, how to stop and pause and meet those voices right where they're at instead of allowing them to take over. But when your whole life becomes this performance of, I'm fine, I'm going to plaster this fake smile on my face, you forget how to tell the truth about what you actually need. And you deserve to have your needs met. Every single one of us deserve that. We have to be willing to meet that discomfort and sit with it, and then take the tools and start working through it. But that's why everything feels heavier than it should. That's why your confidence doesn't stick. Going back to, if your worth isn't there, if you don't have that solid foundation, then that confidence isn't going to stick. That's why your success, when you have success, and I promise there's more success there than you realize, but that's why that success is not satisfying. Why, when you hit your goals and you start reaching those milestones, it still doesn't feel like enough. Like, you've got to do more. Maybe it's deep down, you don't believe you're allowed to rest. I know that was mine for a long time. You don't believe you're allowed to need. You don't believe you're allowed to want more unless you've earned it through struggles. How many of you does that hit? Like, I haven't struggled enough, so I don't deserve this. But here again is where I want to meet you, and I want to validate what you're feeling. But I also encourage you to hear me out. That is not truth. That is just survival. That's what happens when you've never been taught what it means to value yourself outside of what you do for everyone else. You are not the problem. You were never broken. You just learned to tie your worth to output instead of your identity. And again, I want to reinforce, you do not have to prove or rebuild your worth by doing more, okay? We rebuild it by pausing long enough to ask ourselves better questions. Questions like, when did I start believing I wasn't enough? Who taught me that love had to be earned? When did I start thinking that rest meant weakness? And again, I encourage you to pause this and reflect on those questions. Maybe write them down so you can come back to them later. Or in those moments that you are starting to doubt, you can pause and reflect on those questions. But I brought a tool, and drop value in the comments for me if this is adding some kind of value or if you're having any kind of aha moments. But I want to provide something for you to take away today, for you to try. What I want you to do is I want you to set a timer for 5 minutes. Anytime that you're starting to feel the ways that I was explaining, set a timer for 5 minutes. All right? Go sit in your car, maybe step outside, lock yourself in the bathroom if that is your quiet place. Find somewhere quiet. Okay, and then I want you to ask yourself, what am I doing today out of fear? And what would I do differently if I truly believed I'm already enough? Ladies, I don't want you to edit yourself. I don't want you to try to put this like perfect polished language. Just write what comes up, write what you're really feeling. You might be surprised what that voice sounds like when you finally give her space to speak. Oftentimes, I would tie my worth and how successful I was to how productive I was. And I think I've said this before, like even my husband has called me out on it. In fact, we both, like full transparency, we had a moment this last week that it was time to have a very open, a very honest conversation. And my husband and I's strength is not being open and talking. We both very much close our emotions in. We wait until it is like to the point that we can't take it anymore, right? But we got to that point and it was time for that open, honest conversation. And that was one thing that I explained to him. And he's been amazing at meeting me right where I'm at. Like, I am so blessed and so fortunate to have him. But that's something I told him. Like, I don't know how many times I'll see him pull in the driveway or come in from the other room, and I, out of habits, put my phone down and start getting to work to make it look like I'm busy and being productive. Because that's what I have tied adding value to. And I don't know how many times he's told me, even prior to this conversation, how many times he's told me, like, you've got to slow down. You've got to kick your feet up. It's okay to rest. And I'm getting there. And he's been so patient with me. And I'm so thankful for that. But same thing, Shaylee, exactly what you're saying. Like, I feel like everybody else has to be taken care of first, but it doesn't have to be that way. We are allowed to meet our needs. Our worth is not tied to our productivity. All right. So again, if you hear nothing else from this live, that's what you hear tonight. Our worth is not tied to our productivity. You are worthy just as you are. All right. And I want you to celebrate those wins. At the end of the day, find something that you did. And I don't want it to be tied to an outcome, not something like I cleaned the house today, I picked up the toys, not that kind of win. I am talking, I used the tool of meeting the discomfort right where it's at. And I sat with that today. Celebrate that, because that's the kind of stuff that is going to rewire your brain to realize the wins don't come for your productivity. All right. So if this spoke to you, maybe you've been showing up, doing all these things and still wondering why it doesn't feel like enough. This is your invitation to go deeper. All right. I encourage you to start with my roadmap if you haven't already. It is a very personalized deep dive into those beliefs, those patterns, those emotional habits that's keeping you stuck. Okay. If you want to know more about my mastermind and how we can work together there, that is more of the accountability piece. We go deeper, we go longer, but we walk the road together. Either way, drop worth in the comments, ladies, and I would be more than happy to see what's a good fit. Again, I'm about ready to launch some courses. I'm super excited about that. But the biggest thing is you don't need another plan. You do not need to come home to this new version of yourself, because that truth is you were never meant to earn your value. You were never meant to earn your worth. You were born with it. It is inside of you. And it is time for you to start living like you believe it. And if you're not there yet, I believe in you. I believe in your worth. You are enough. You are worthy. Ladies, thank you for hanging out with me. I hope I added some kind of value to your day. As always, I'm empowering you always, and I will see you next time.